headlines, sorting through the media bias, exposing the propaganda, and challenging you to use your brain. It's time to tap into the truth.
Yes, that's right, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed time to tap into the truth. Welcome to tonight's broadcast. Thank you for joining us. It is October the 15th, and it is just the smidge before 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This is your host, Tim Tapp, broadcasting live from historic Roane County, Tennessee. Happy to be here. And by the way, if you caught yesterday's broadcast, apologies. I wasn't exactly 100%. I was tired and I was under the weather, and I didn't exactly bring it. The stories that were involved, far too important not to have done a better job, quite honestly, and I feel like I failed miserably. So for those of you who didn't catch it, don't bother going back. We'll touch on it again later. Those of you who did catch it, I apologize. That's all I can do. Unfortunately, it was not one of my better efforts, and it's unfortunately sometimes that happens, and you deserve better than that. If you're going to take the time to listen to this broadcast, I need to bring it, regardless of how I'm feeling. So, again, apologies. And speaking of the show, for those of you who like alternative ways to consume the product, this show and the Blog Talk version of Tap Into the Truth are both available on iTunes. If you happen to have a subscription, you can search for Tap Into the Truth and you can get both there. You also can get the Blog Talk version of the show at Stitcher.com, and now officially both versions of the show. Sorry, just had a brief glitch there. Not real sure what's going on. But as I was saying, both versions of the show, both at Spreaker and at Blog Talk, are available on TuneIn.com. So very happy to be able to bring both broadcasts there. At any rate, let's get to today's topics, shall we? With no more excuses and no more looking back. Bottom line is, a big part of why I was having issues with yesterday's broadcast has a lot to do with the fact that I just flat out still couldn't believe everything that's going on. We have a federal government via executive fiat, whether it's the occupier himself giving the orders or someone else in his administration that he's delegated that authority to, trying to bully World War II veterans. Come on. Unless your purpose is to specifically try to upset as many Americans as possible, not a good plan. But between that and the debt ceiling negotiation and the government shutdown still looming, there's really very few excuses left. Anybody that's still buying into the fact that this is a Republican shutdown and that it's all the Republicans' fault is simply not paying attention. You're listening to what a few talking heads are saying, and you're not taking the time to do your due diligence. You're not doing your own research. You're just taking talking points from somebody who believes it's their job to convince you of what you're supposed to think, instead of taking the time to actually step up and tell you all those wonderful things that are simply fact and truth. That thing that the media used to be about, being a watchdog and protecting the public in general. So here's what I'm saying. covered this a little bit before, but when we get to the point where it looks like the Republicans are going to completely just give up the fight entirely, then the Democrats come back and say, well, no, that's still not good enough. Now we want you to go back and lift sequestration as well. Come on. At some point, you have to realize which side is actually being obstructive. The Republicans took a stand on principle. Period. They took a stand on principle. That's what they're supposed to do. That is part of the job. And whether you agree with them or not, you still have to stand up and say, hey, thank you for actually doing your job. Thank you for caring enough to take a stand based on what you think is the right thing. Because you're not getting that from the other side. They're not taking a stand based on what they think is best for everyone. They're taking a stand on what they think is best for their re-election chances. And unfortunately, that's still a prime motivating factor on both sides of the aisle, which is why you're already seeing signs of buckling. But I'm going to digress from there, and I'm going to touch on one of the stories I was talking about yesterday. We were talking about this food stamp fiasco that took place over the weekend. Seems that in 17 states, for a while, EBT cards weren't working at all. You had folks in LA threatening to riot, and evidently it affected a lot of people. But one of the more unusual things that took place, and we hit on this very hard yesterday, we were talking about how, for whatever reason, in the state of Louisiana, instead of no access, everybody's EBT cards were suddenly unlimited. And we were talking about who is it that's going to end up on the hook here. And I was immediately saying that these food stamp recipients, the folks that have the EBT cards, they know how much they have available in benefits. So the instant they started trying to buy more stuff than they legitimately could get, they were guilty of fraud. But I also pointed out then that it isn't just a matter of them being guilty, because Walmart, because they made a big deal about a couple of different Walmarts in two specific cities, Spring Hill and Mansfield. These two particular Walmarts were advised to go ahead and continue taking the food stamps. Walmart was just as guilty in this because they're trying to scam taxpayers. They know how this program works. Food stamps, just like a lot of other things that operate through the EBT cards, are managed by the state, but still rely heavily on federal dollars for their budget. Okay? So these are federal programs, but they're still basically state programs at the same time. And Walmart knew that if they played the victim, that they would have the opportunity, although they were quite certain the government would deny them initially, that they would have grounds for a lawsuit to try and recoup their losses. So Walmart made the decision to try and put the American taxpayer on the hook, not just the Louisiana taxpayer, not just the folks in that state. They knew the federal government, or at least this is what they were thinking, okay? They just knew in their heart of hearts that the federal government would swoop in and make up the difference. Now, the first thing you got to ask yourself, however, is why would Walmart, of all people, think that the federal government would be willing to do that on their behalf? Yes, they're one of the largest employers in the country and represent a big part of the free market economy that's left, but because they're not unionized, well, they tend to be a target for a democratically controlled government. So how many favors would they really expect to get. Somebody somewhere just wasn't thinking on this one. And I pointed out to you yesterday, and again, I'm saying this now for your benefit, so you don't have to go back and check out yesterday's show. Yesterday's show was not one of my better performances. But I pointed out yesterday that Walmart should be on the hook for this. Well, today, headlines are coming out that it will actually be Walmart, or at least the state of Louisiana at this point in time is saying that Walmart is on the hook for this deal. Bottom line is, this glitch that prompted the mega shopping spree that nearly wiped out stores in Louisiana after the electronic benefit transfer system temporarily removed spending limits on food stamp recipients. The Louisiana Department of Children and Family Services, which is, of course, the branch of the state government that oversees the SNAP program, or Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program, fancy word for food stamps. Okay. Basically, they came out today saying that Walmart will have to foot the bill for the store's losses in Spring Hill and in Mansfield during the shopping frenzy. According to the actual release, no card is limited, according to spokesperson Trey Williams. Usually, when outages occur, it's the store's responsibility to take action, including calling a number to verify customers' cards' limits. But some retailers chose not to do that Saturday night. These businesses are only reimbursed for the benefits on the card, and they are completely responsible. So, if someone had $50 on their card and they spent $100, the retailer, in this case Walmart, would be on the hook for the other $50. Again, as I pointed out in yesterday's broadcast, this is standard practice. This is part of being responsible. This is part of being part of the network allowed to accept food stamps. You know, there's reasons why lots of places for a very long time didn't take food stamps. They didn't want to deal with the additional paperwork. They didn't want to have to jump through the federal hoops, because it's not like you can just open up one day and say, okay, well, we can take a swipe card. Let's do it. It's okay. It doesn't work like that. And there are a long list of things that you accept as part of your responsibility for accepting these cards. Walmart is aware of this at the corporate level. And it was somebody at the corporate level that told these folks to go ahead and continue accepting the cards. Now, the no-limit glitch occurred as the EBT system had their issues Saturday in several states during a routine backup test or an upgrade, depending on which source you're asking and at what time, because we've heard both these stories. Now, the truth of the matter is it may have been a little of both, which is why both stories are out there. Ultimately, it doesn't matter. There were just a lot of people upset that their cards weren't working at all, and then a lot of people who seemed to think that it was freaking Mardi Gras through the entire state of Louisiana while they were getting free stuff from Walmart. I do find it very odd, though, that only the Walmarts in these two cities seem to have this problem. At any rate, Walmart employees knew immediately that something was wrong, but they were advised by the corporate office to allow shoppers to make their purchases. Some stores, however, chose to close until the situation had been resolved. So, corporate says, go ahead and keep taking the cards. Doesn't that still mean that you do that in accordance to the rules and regulations? Making the phone call, verifying the limit, like the spokesperson said in his interview? Shouldn't some common sense been put in play? Walmart asked to be taken advantage of. Somebody managing these particular stores seemed to think that suddenly they had become Santa Claus. At any rate, the system was back online by Saturday night, but not before the Spring Hill Walmart was nearly wiped out. It was definitely worse than Black Friday. It was worse than anything we had ever seen in this town. There was no food left on any of the shelves and no meat left. The grocery part of Walmart was totally decimated. This from Spring Hill Police Chief Will Lynn in an interview he gave to ABC News. Does Walmart have any recourse? That's the first question you ask. If the state government and then by extension the federal government have no intentions of making up the difference, what can they do? Well, according to KSLA, local news affiliate, Louisiana can track welfare fraud with GPS-based software. Therefore, the Department of Child and Family Services know who bought what and how much was supposedly spent. Law enforcement officers can obtain that information and can pass it along to the stores requested. Now, that's just a fancy way of saying you used a swipe card. They know who you were. They know how much the bill was. And they know that you know how much you actually had available on your EBT card. So they know that you knew that you were stealing the food at that point. And there's no two ways about it. I don't care how you try to justify it in your mind. You're already getting this benefit. This is already taxpayer dollars coming from somebody else. The government set up to give it to you. I don't have to like that necessarily, but I'm not arguing against it either because food stamps is extremely helpful for a lot of folks. And let's face it, right now in this economy, if people weren't getting food stamps, people wouldn't be eating. So I'm not knocking the food stamps. But what I am telling you is that if you intentionally, knowingly go beyond your limit because of a glitch when you know something's wrong, then you are stealing. Period. End of discussion. There is no moral gray area here at all. You are involved in defrauding your state government, defrauding the taxpayers, not only of your state, but of all of the United States, because again, the SNAP program is managed at the state level, but it's funded at the federal level. So you guys, you're on the hook. Walmart could simply choose to take the losses. They're not going to. They're going to go to court. They're going to try to force the state into paying them. They're not going to win. Because, again, part of the entire setup of this program sets out procedures and policies you're supposed to follow. And the precedent has already been set. It's part of the terms of service. You agree to accept this benefit, you follow the rules. So they're not going to win. Walmart will go to court. They'll try and force Louisiana and then the U.S. taxpayers, by extension, to cover their losses. The real question is going to be, after that fails, are they going to press criminal charges against the individuals that took advantage of this? That would be the type of PR that Walmart really can't afford. So I expect that this will probably be the end of it after you see them go to court, challenge Louisiana, try and get some judge to issue an order, hey, well, it wasn't really Walmart's fault, and after all, they were just trying to make sure people could eat. They're going to lose that argument, though, because according to the state spokesman, all they had to do was pick up a phone to verify. How do you convince a judge that if all you had to do was pick up a phone? Now, granted, you don't want to have to do that on each and every customer that comes through. But if you've seen the footage of what transpired in these particular stores, you do it just because it's the right thing to do. Period. End of the discussion. At any rate, going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we're going to move on to the main topic of today's show, which has to be one of the dumbest stories I have heard yet. And I just had to share it. I could not keep this to myself. This has to get out into everyone's knowledge. Everyone needs to know about this. They just have to know. But in the meanwhile, stay with us. We'll be right back.
Tap into the truth. Check us out at tapintothetruth.com for our latest blog post and for links to all of our past broadcasts. Don't forget to like us on Facebook and to follow us on Twitter. That's Tap Into the Truth right here on Spreaker Radio.
Yes, that's right, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed Tap Into the Truth, and you can find us on Facebook. You can find us on Twitter. You can check us out at tapintothetruth.com. You also can find us on iTunes, at Stitcher.com, at TuneIn.com. You can find us at Blog Talk, and of course you can find us right here on Spreaker. And I appreciate everyone for staying with us and listening. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. Tonight's title topic, the Tea Party Kills a Garden. Now, for those of you who may not have yet heard this tragic tale of what once again has occurred at the hands of those horrible, nasty, unbelievably evil Tea Party Republicans, the Obama White House South Lawn vegetable garden is facing the tragedy of being destroyed. A focal point of the MOVE initiative that Michelle Obama started a while back was creating this kitchen garden. Now, while it was bad enough that these terrible Tea Party Republican terrorists killed the First Lady's Twitter account, because she can't bother to send out tweets herself, and that part of her staff was deemed non-essential. Well, now they've even taken her garden hostage. The famous White House kitchen garden, which we all know and love at this point, has fallen victim to the government shutdown. There are literally, this was released, a press release, okay, this was reported in Reuters. Tomatoes are rotting on the vine. Herbs have gone to seed. And sweet potatoes, oh my goodness, the favorite of the occupier himself, Mr. Barack Hussein Obama, have become worm food. No, literally, this is how they reported it. I'm reading from the article right now. It's another impact of the government shutdown. Woo-hoo. One that only the facts and the many squirrels that live there. They said facts, so I think they meant fox. I heard somewhere, I read somewhere today that there is a fox that's moved into the garden. Don't know where a fox is coming from necessarily in D.C. Seems like a pretty urban area. This, I guess, if you raise a garden, animals will come. Anyway, only the fox and the many squirrels that live on the White House grounds, they're the only ones getting to enjoy this garden now. Due to the shutdown, garden maintenance has been reduced considerably and only being watered as needed. Yes, in fact, a White House official confirmed, speaking on background, that's right. Obama can barricade war memorials and kick people out of national parks, but he can't tend his own garden. Literally, he can't take care of his own garden. He can't take care of his own backyard. Metaphors? Anyone? I mean, this was released initially from the Obama Foodorama blog, which is the official blog record about the White House food initiatives, from policy to pie. Believe it or not. The first government shutdown in 17 years has had a dramatic impact on First Lady Michelle Obama's world-famous kitchen garden on the South Lawn. Currently bursting with more than 30 kinds of vegetables, including presidential pumpkins, awaiting harvest just in time for Halloween. In the 11 days since the shutdown began on October 1st, that would be like 15 days now. But again, this is coming from the blog, as I said. The pounds and pounds of ripe organic bounty have gone to waste. The vegetables, filling the 1,500 square foot plot, are now rotting away on the vines and in the boxed beds, thanks to the mandate for minimal maintenance placed on the skeletal crew of National Park Service gardeners who remain on duty at 1,600 Penn. This is indeed the result of Republican tyranny. This was released as an actual news story. It wasn't just blogged, but this was released as actual news story. We see this in actual news agencies picking up on this. And you know what? There's just a few things that kind of stand out to me about this. You know, first of all, pounds and pounds of vegetables. Are you honestly going to tell me that no one is available to harvest the vegetables that are in this garden? The herbs have gone to seed. Yeah, I'm just spitballing here a little bit. Maybe I'm oversimplifying. But two questions come immediately to mind. Number one is, first and foremost, if you do actually still have gardeners on duty, why could they not tend to the garden? Watering as needed is all they're allowed to do? How does that save any money? I'm sorry, if they're there and they're on the grounds and they're on the clock, that means they're getting paid. Now, granted, because of the shutdown, lots of these folks won't actually receive their paychecks until this government shutdown is over. But they will get their back pay. They are working. They're not working for nothing. They're just not getting paid the way they ordinarily would immediately. And, a lot of folks wouldn't accept that situation. No, they just wouldn't. If you or I went to our regular jobs in the private sector and we showed up and they said, you know what, instead of paying you the normal payroll pattern we have, we're going to save up for a while. Most of us wouldn't put up with that. We wouldn't. So then the first question you need to ask yourself is, why are the government employees putting up with it? Why aren't they out finding something else in the private sector? Well, first of all, there's not a lot of work out there to get, certainly not full-time work. Another happy coincidence of the Obama economy, right? You don't have to agree. I understand. Not everyone who listens to this show agrees with everything I say, and that's fine. I prefer it that way because, like I said, I want you to do your own homework. I want you to think for yourself, but I want you to be able to back up why you think what you think. It's that simple. So don't agree with me, but look at the economy. You can't tell me that there are a lot of great full-time job opportunities out there for folks. So that's number one reason why they're not. But actually, that's probably the number two reason why they're not. The number one reason why they're not is because they know they've got a sweet deal. Why would you look for another job when you have a great job where you've got a pay rate that is between twice to three times as much as what a private sector comparable job would pay you? Not to mention the fact that you have benefits that go above and beyond, and the fact that you now have a guarantee that you will be paid for this time after the fact, even if you weren't one of the people that showed up for work. Furloughed workers are going to get paid as if they went to work. They're getting a paid vacation. They just have to wait a while. And several of them are going to be collecting unemployment benefits in the meanwhile. Does it suck for them? Yes. I don't mean to diminish the fact that for anyone, if you're used to getting a check and then suddenly you're not getting that check, that sucks. Period. Plain and simple. And I don't mean to diminish it by any way. But the truth of the matter is, a lot of government employees are not necessary. You guys are costing taxpayers a tremendous amount of cash. But I digress. So let me get back to my point. The first question is, if you've already got these people on the clock and they're going to be getting paid, why not just let them do the job? But then a second, far more important question comes to mind, and I actually lead into it by asking another question is, wasn't the name of Michelle Obama's little initiative Move? Wasn't that what she started? Move? So that brings me to the question of, it is Michelle's garden, right? They do have the two daughters who look to me like they would be willing to spend some time in a nice, neat, manicured garden like what they had to work with in the beginning. It's good for kids to spend time around vegetables and growing things. It's very good. It's not even about the fact that, okay, you've got this, you should have to learn the work ethic. This is about spending time with nature and spending time outside. Stuff that I'm pretty sure none of the members of this family really gets to do very much of. They might even find it therapeutic, stress relieving. They might even enjoy it. So, why are they not out here doing this? Why isn't Michelle Obama taking care of her own garden? Why isn't she employing the rest of the family. If the National Park Service gardeners simply aren't permitted, why aren't they taking care of what's supposed to be her garden herself? And why, if they're not going to do it, would they ever let this press release be put out there? Did they honestly think the optics here would once again make the House Republicans look bad? Look what you did to our garden! I know around here in the South, regardless of what you're doing today, you have probably, unless you're very urban, unless you grew up in specific parts of Knoxville or Chattanooga or Nashville or Memphis, and it really isn't just those areas, and it's still specific parts of those cities. Unless you grew up there, chances are you have spent some time in and around farmland. You have some experience, whether it was something as simple as baling hay or actually having a small backyard garden or whatever it might be. If you are fortunate enough to work on a working farm to get the real experience, it teaches you three things. Number one, that nature is awesome. Number two, that hard work has benefits that you can actually quantify, both health-wise and with the ability to feed yourself. Now, I can understand why Democrats might not necessarily want people learning that lesson. Heaven forbid that you should find out that you don't actually have to count on the government to take care of you. Can't have anybody learning that lesson. And maybe I just now accidentally stumbled across the real purpose for letting the garden go. We can't be seen as doing this because it might send the wrong message. Dude, seriously, the wrong message isn't letting this story get out at all. This is rife for the picking. It's rife with one more metaphor after another for how ineffective and how little leadership is taking place in the grips and the confines of the White House currently. There's absolutely no reason why this garden isn't being taken care of. There isn't. It's another excuse to try and find somebody who's going to buy into the, ooh, look what the mean old Republicans have done. And at some point, why don't you ask yourself, if this was your house, and you had a garden around back, and you were paying somebody to take care of it for you, and for a couple of weeks, they just weren't available. Something happened. They were in a car crash. They had their father in the hospital. Something kept them from coming to take care. Are you just going to let it go? Chances are, if this is your house, you're going to take care of it. You're going to do the in-between. You're paying somebody else so that you don't have to. Yeah, I get that. If you're in a position where you can afford to do that, it would be better if you were in a position that you could afford to do that with your own money and not taxpayer dollars. But if you're in a position where you can do that, fine. Okay, it's good. You've created a job for someone. That's lovely. But the position doesn't go away just because the individuals do. Something's got to be done. So, the way this is being shown is that it's the Tea Party that's done this. I'm going to take a really quick break. Come back. We're going to finish up. And I'm going to ask you one more time, please stay with us. We'll be right back.
Tap Into the Truth. Check us out at tapintothetruth.com for our latest blog post and for links to all of our past broadcasts. Don't forget to like us on Facebook and to follow us on Twitter. That's Tap Into the Truth right here on Spreaker Radio.
You know, I'm tempted to just let that keep playing in the background. Because, you know, that's not too bad. I like that for bumper music. In fact, I think I am going to just go ahead and let that finish up. Here's the deal. I'm going to turn it down a little more, though. We are talking about headlines across the country talking about how this garden has been decimated because of the government shutdown. And I'm sorry, but how do you, with a clear conscience, put out any type of statement that the Tea Party has killed this kitchen garden when all you have to do is walk outside and move your own backside, you know, the way you keep telling everybody else they're supposed to, and take care of it? Yes, 1,500 square feet, probably a bigger lot than she had ever had to take care of on her own before. And I say probably because I don't know. When she was younger, maybe she did do something like this. I've never seen anything like this in her background, looking at her bio. But given where she was headed on her life trajectory and the fact that she is a revolutionary and very committed ideologue, I doubt she would mention something like gardening in her background anyway. So maybe she's got that back there in the background. Maybe she doesn't. I don't know. But ultimately, it still comes down to this. Number one, the Tea Party has nothing to do with that garden. Because A, you still have gardeners on staff. If you're going to send members of the Park Service out here to act like militia, then I think you can send a couple out with rakes, hose, and watering hoses and take care of this relatively small garden. But if you refuse to do that, if you really are just saying, well, we feel really bad that we can't pay you right now, so we're only going to make you water some stuff. Well, that's great. But how about taking some responsibility? You live in the White House. You send out invitations and direct who is and is not allowed to come in and visit. You have responsibilities as the first family. Now, whether you're wholeheartedly in support of them being there, or if you're a lot like me and seriously question whether they should ever been allowed to set foot on the property, doesn't matter. They're there. They're supposed to be responsible for it. So, how about taking a little responsibility? Just a little. Because so far, all I've ever seen anybody in this family do is point fingers and blame other people. This garden is no different. The Tea Party is not killing this garden. Michelle's inability to move is what's killing this garden. And that is the final thought for today. Thank you very much for tuning in. And remember, don't take my word for it. Definitely don't take their word for it. Take a little time, do your own research, use your brain, and always be prepared to work just a little bit hard so that you can always tap into the truth. Thanks, and have a great night, everybody. See you again soon.